The old merchant's eyes gleamed in the dim light of the tavern as he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. Species from across the galaxy had gathered here on the trade station, and all conversation had stopped when he began his tale. "You younglings think you know the galaxy," he said, his weathered hands tracing patterns in the air. "But there was a time, long before your empires rose, when legends walked among the stars." A young pilot from the Dominion Empire laughed. "More stories about the mythical humans, old-timer? Everyone knows those are just fairy tales." The merchant's smile was patient. "Fairy tales, you say? Then explain the ruins on Kepler Prime. Metal that cannot be scratched by our strongest tools, yet bends like cloth when the right frequency is applied. Energy sources that still power entire cities after 10,000 years, though no one understands how they work." The tavern fell silent. Everyone had heard of the impossible artifacts scattered across the galaxy, ancient technology that made their most advanced systems look primitive. Most scholars claimed these were left by some unknown, extinct civilization. But the stories always spoke of humans. "My grandfather's grandfather served aboard a merchant vessel," the old trader continued. "They were attacked by pirates near the Veil Nebula. Ship was dying, crew was preparing for the worst. Then a strange vessel appeared. Sleek, silver, unlike anything they had ever seen. The pirates' weapons simply stopped working. Just like that, as if someone had flipped a switch." He paused, taking a sip from his drink while his audience waited. The silver ship opened communications. The voice was calm, friendly. Spoke in perfect galactic standard, though the accent was strange. "Are you in need of assistance?" it asked. The captain was too shocked to respond properly. The voice chuckled and said, "Don't worry, we'll take care of this." The pirate ships just left, all of them. Turned around and flew away like they had suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere. A trader from the Syndicate Alliance shook her head. "Even if that story is true, it proves nothing. Could have been any advanced species." "Ah, but that's not the end," the merchant said. The silver ship approached, and its pilot came aboard. Bipedal, like many species, but something different about them. The way they moved, the way they seemed to understand everything with just a glance. They repaired the merchant ship using tools that looked like magic. Fixed systems that shouldn't have been repairable. When the captain asked who they were, the being smiled and said, "Just neighbors helping out." He looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. Before leaving, this human gave the captain a small device, said it would call for help if they were ever in real trouble, but warned that it should only be used in true emergencies. The captain kept that device for 40 years, never used it once. When he died, he passed it to his son with the same warning. "It's still in my family, still working after all these generations," the Dominion pilot scoffed. "If humans were so advanced, where are they now? Why haven't we seen them?" "That's the mystery, isn't it?" the merchant replied. "The stories all agree on one thing. About 3,000 years ago, they just stopped appearing. No great war, no catastrophe. They simply faded from the galaxy, like morning mist. Some say they ascended to a higher plane of existence. Others believe they retreated to hidden worlds beyond the galactic rim." An archaeologist who had been listening quietly finally spoke up. "I've studied the ruins on 17 different worlds. The construction techniques, the energy signatures, the mathematical principles embedded in the architecture. They're all consistent with a single civilization. A civilization that understood physics in ways we still can't comprehend." She pulled out a small holographic projector displaying images of ancient structures. "Look at this gateway on Rigel 7. It's carved from a single piece of matter, but scans show it's somehow folded space itself. The inscription beside it is in 17 different languages, including several we've only recently deciphered. They all say the same thing: For friends in need, when the darkness comes, remember the light." The merchant nodded sagely. Every species has their human stories. The Crystalline Collective speaks of teachers who showed them how to sing their cities into existence. The hive clusters remember visitors who taught them that unity doesn't require the loss of individuality. The nomad fleet still follows star charts supposedly given to them by human explorers. He stood preparing to leave, but paused for one final thought. "Here's what troubles me about your modern empires. You've grown strong, built great fleets, conquered star systems. But the humans in the stories? They never conquered anyone. They helped, they taught, they protected the weak. And when they left, they didn't take anything with them except the gratitude of 1,000 worlds." As the old merchant walked away, the tavern remained silent. Outside the viewport, the stars seemed different somehow, as if they were keeping secrets. The young Dominion pilot found himself thinking about the ancient ruins he'd seen during his service. The unexplained energy readings, the impossible architecture, the feeling that something vast and benevolent had once watched over the galaxy. The depths of space, automated monitoring stations continued their silent vigil, their sensors sweeping the void for threats that never seemed to come anymore. Their creators had been gone for millennia, but their gifts remained. Peaceful trade routes that pirates avoided for reasons they couldn't explain. Dangerous nebulae that somehow always had safe passage through them. Aggressive species that had suddenly developed philosophical inclinations toward peace. The legends lived on, passed from world to world, species to species. Each telling added new details, new wonders, new mysteries. But all agreed on the fundamental truth. Somewhere among the stars, humans had walked as living legends, and their absence left the galaxy a little darker, a little more uncertain. Perhaps the old stories were just myths after all. But in the vast emptiness between the stars, something vast and patient continued to watch, to wait, and to remember what it meant to be guardians of the light. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called in the dead of night, but the chamber buzzed with terrified energy as representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in their floating discussion pods. Ambassador Thane of the Dominion. Empire had never seen such fear in the council chambers, not even during the worst trade wars or border disputes. The massive holographic display at the center of the chamber showed something that defied belief. Where the Outer Rim colonies had once dotted the galactic edge, now there was simply empty space. Not destroyed, not conquered, but consumed entirely, leaving behind only cosmic dust and the faint energy signatures of unimaginable industry. The Kepler Mining Consortium was the first to go dark, reported Intelligence Director Vale, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was describing. 7 billion inhabitants across 12 worlds. No distress signals, no final transmissions. By the time our investigation fleet arrived, we found only this. The display shifted to show grainy footage from a surveillance drone. Massive geometric shapes moved through space like a dark tide, each one the size of a small moon. They flowed over planets like liquid metal, breaking apart surface matter and reconstructing it into more of themselves. The process was terrifyingly efficient, consuming entire worlds in a matter of hours. "We're calling them the Harvester Fleet," Vale continued. "Self-replicating machines of unknown origin. They convert all matter they encounter into additional units. Our analysts estimate that for every world they consume, their numbers triple." A representative from the Crystalline Collective sang a harmony of distress. How is this possible? What force could create such things? Dr. Hayes, the Council's chief archaeologist, stepped forward. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she manipulated the holographic controls. "We've run extensive analysis on their construction patterns, their energy signatures, their behavioral algorithms. The technology is unlike anything in our current databases, but it matches theoretical frameworks we've found in ancient ruins." The display changed again, showing side-by-side comparisons of harvester construction techniques and artifacts from long-dead civilizations. The similarities were undeniable. "These machines are old," Hayes continued, "older than any current galactic power. We estimate they were built at least 10,000 years ago, possibly more. They've been dormant somewhere beyond the galactic rim, and something has awakened them." Ambassador Thane felt a chill run through his spine. "How long before they reach the core worlds?" Vale's expression was grim. "At their current expansion rate, 18 months, possibly less if they encounter more heavily populated systems to fuel their growth." Panic rippled through the chamber as the full scope of the threat became clear. The combined military might of all galactic civilizations had never faced anything like this. Their weapons, their shields, their tactical doctrines, all had been developed for fighting other biological civilizations with similar technological constraints. But these harvesters operated on principles that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. "What about the Dominion's new dreadnoughts?" called out a military advisor. "Surely our most advanced warships can make a difference." Commander Black, leader of the Joint Military Response, activated his own holographic display. "We sent a full battle group to intercept a small harvester formation near the Titan Nebula. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 dreadnoughts, and our most experienced crews. The harvesters didn't even slow down. Our energy weapons passed through them harmlessly. Our kinetic rounds were absorbed and converted into additional mass. The entire battle group was consumed in under 3 hours. The silence that followed was deafening. If the military's best efforts were useless, what hope did they have? Dr. Hayes cleared her throat, her voice barely audible. There might be another option. She activated a new display showing ancient star charts covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. "For the past decade, I've been studying references to the legendary humans in ruins across the galaxy. Most colleagues dismiss this as mythology, but the references are consistent across cultures that never had contact with each other." She highlighted specific sections of the ancient texts. "Look at these passages. They don't just describe humans as advanced beings. They describe them as the creators of impossible technologies, manipulators of fundamental forces, builders of constructs that could reshape reality itself." A skeptical voice called out from the syndicate delegation. "Even if these humans were real, they vanished thousands of years ago. How does this help us now?" Hayes pulled up another display, this one showing a complex mathematical formula that hurt to look at directly. 3 months ago, our deep space surveys detected an energy signature in the void sector, the same signature that appears in every major human artifact we've found. The source is located in a star system that doesn't appear on any of our charts, but the coordinates match references hidden in the most ancient ruins." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "I believe the humans didn't disappear. I believe they withdrew to a hidden sanctuary, and they may still be there." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some called it desperate wishful thinking. Others argued that legends and myths were all they had left. But as reports continued to pour in of more worlds consumed, more fleets destroyed, the impossible began to seem reasonable. Emergency funding was approved within hours. A joint expedition would be assembled, crewed by representatives from every major civilization. They would carry with them copies of every human artifact, every translated text, every scrap of evidence that might prove their case to beings who might be nothing more than ancient ghosts. As the council session ended and representatives hurried to prepare for what might be the galaxy's last desperate gambit, Dr. Hayes remained alone in the chamber, staring at the ancient star charts. The symbols seemed to pulse with their own inner light, as if responding to the galaxy's need. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, automated systems that had slumbered for millennia began to stir. Long-range sensors that had monitored the galaxy's growth with patient satisfaction suddenly detected patterns that triggered deeper protocols. The Harvester fleet's energy signature was recognized, categorized, and marked for immediate attention in hidden sanctuaries beyond the galactic rim. Beings who had once walked among the stars as living legends received reports from their monitoring systems. The children they had protected and nurtured for so long were in danger. Ancient weapons were powered up for the first time in centuries. Ships that existed in carefully folded dimensions of space began to unfold into normal reality. The galaxy's greatest crisis was about to become something much more interesting. The sleeping giants were beginning to wake up. The expedition fleet had been traveling for 6 weeks through uncharted space, following coordinates that might lead to nothing but empty void. Dr. Hayes stood in the observation deck of the flagship, watching stars that appeared on no galactic map drift past the viewport. Behind her, the representatives from dozens of worlds waited in nervous silence. "Contact ahead," announced Navigator Kim from the bridge. "Multiple artificial structures detected at the edge of the target system." The fleet dropped out of faster than light. Travel and every being aboard gasped at what they saw. A vast ring of crystalline structures surrounded the star system, each one the size of a small planet. They pulsed with gentle light that seemed to bend space around them, creating impossible geometric patterns that hurt to perceive directly. "Sensors are going crazy," reported Science Officer Liu. "Those structures are generating energy readings that don't match any known physics. It's like they're folding space itself into new configurations." Before anyone could respond, the expedition fleet found itself surrounded by a soft blue glow. Not threatening, but absolutely irresistible. Their ships began moving toward the central star system, whether they wanted to or not. Their engines and navigation systems completely bypassed by whatever force had taken hold of them. "Don't panic," came a warm voice over the communication system. "You're perfectly safe. We're just bringing you somewhere more comfortable to talk." The voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, with an accent that sounded somehow familiar and completely alien at the same time. Ambassador Thane tried to respond, but his communication systems were offline, along with weapons, shields, and everything else except life support. The fleet was guided past planets that defied every rule of astronomy. Worlds with impossible colors, moons that orbited in patterns that should have torn them apart, space itself that seemed to flow like water around massive installations. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was reality being rewritten by beings who understood the universe at a level no one had imagined possible. They were brought aboard a station that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. The docking process involved their ships simply passing through what looked like solid matter, emerging in a bay that was somehow larger inside than the entire station appeared from outside. The airlock opened with a gentle hiss, revealing a corridor. That looked surprisingly mundane. Clean white walls, soft lighting, and gravity that felt exactly like galactic standard. A figure approached from the far end of the corridor, and Hayes felt her heart stop. It was definitely humanoid, but there was something about the way it moved that suggested vast patience and gentle humor. When it spoke, the voice was the same, one that had guided them here. "Welcome to Haven Station. I'm Commander Roberts. We've been expecting you, though I have to admit we didn't think it would take quite this long for someone to find us." The being looked exactly like the descriptions from the ancient legends. Bipedal, roughly average height, with features that somehow suggested both wisdom and playful curiosity. But there was something else, something that made every instinct scream that this was no ordinary creature. Power radiated from it like heat from a star, carefully controlled but absolutely unmistakable. Ambassador Thane found his voice first. "You're human. You're actually human." Commander Roberts smiled, an expression that was warm and somehow amused. "Guilty as charged. Though I suspect we're not quite what you expected. Please, come along. Admiral Cross is waiting in the conference room, and I believe we have some tea brewing. It's been a while since we've had visitors from the galactic community." The conference room was comfortable and unpretentious, with a large viewport showing the impossible vista of the hidden star system. Admiral Cross was already seated at a simple wooden table, pouring tea from what looked like an antique ceramic pot. "Milk? Sugar?" Cross asked, as if meeting with desperate representatives from across the galaxy was the most normal thing in the world. "I'm afraid our replicators are a bit enthusiastic. The tea always turns out perfectly, which takes some of the fun out of it." Hayes struggled to process what she was seeing. These beings had technology that made gods look primitive, and they were serving tea from ceramic pots and apologizing for the replicators being too efficient. "Admiral," Thane said carefully, "we come seeking help. The galaxy faces a threat unlike anything we've ever encountered. Ancient machines called the Harvester Fleet are consuming everything in their path. Entire civilizations are being destroyed." Cross nodded thoughtfully, taking a sip of tea. "Ah, yes, the Harvesters. We've been monitoring the situation. Unfortunate business, really. We've been meaning to clean that up for some time, but you know how it is. You put off a small maintenance task, and before you know it, it's become a major inconvenience." The casual tone was staggering. Hayes leaned forward. "Clean it up? Admiral, these machines have destroyed dozens of star systems. Our combined fleets are powerless against them." "Oh my," Cross said, looking genuinely apologetic. "I suppose that would seem rather serious from your perspective. Please don't worry about it. We'll have the situation resolved shortly." He activated a small device on the table, and a holographic display appeared showing the Harvester fleet's current position and movements. But the display also showed thousands of other contacts, moving through space with impossible speed and precision. "The Third Fleet is already en route," Cross explained. "Should have the entire mess sorted out within the week. Probably less if Captain Williams is in one of her efficient moods." Commander Roberts chuckled. "Williams does like to show off when there are witnesses. Remember the Void Kraken incident? She finished that in half, the estimated time, just because the Crystalline Collective was watching." Hayes felt like she was trapped in a dream. "You're talking about the Harvester fleet like it's a minor technical problem." "Well, it is, rather," Cross said gently. "You see, the Harvesters were originally one of our projects, a terraform and construction system designed to prepare worlds for colonization. The artificial intelligence controlling them malfunctioned about 8,000 years ago and went into hibernation mode. We've been monitoring them ever since, waiting for them to wake up so we could implement the fix." The room fell silent as the implications hit the expedition members. These humans hadn't just survived the millennia. They had been watching, protecting, guiding the galaxy's development while remaining hidden. The machines that threatened to destroy all known civilization were nothing more than broken tools to them. "Why?" Thane asked. "Why withdraw? Why hide while the galaxy struggled and fought?" Admiral Cross set down his teacup, his expression becoming more serious. "Because children need room to grow. We tried direct involvement at first, but we discovered that our presence stunted development. Species became dependent on us instead of developing their own capabilities. So we withdrew, but we never stopped caring." He gestured to the viewport, where strange ships could be seen moving between the impossible structures. "We've been out, here, learning, growing, exploring dimensions of existence you haven't discovered yet. But we've also been watching over you, all of you, preventing the truly catastrophic wars, nudging aggressive species toward more peaceful paths, ensuring that promising civilizations had the resources they needed to flourish." Roberts smiled. "The trade routes that always seem to avoid pirate activity? The dangerous regions of space that somehow have safe passages through them? The way certain conflicts always seem to resolve themselves just before they become genocidal? That wasn't luck." Hayes felt tears running down her face as she realized the truth. Humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had become its invisible guardians, watching over countless worlds like parents caring for their children from a distance. Outside the station, the first human warships were already folding space to respond to the Harvester threat. Ships that existed in dimensions beyond normal perception, crewed by beings who had spent millennia learning to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. The galaxy's greatest crisis was about to become a minor footnote in the ongoing story of humanity's patient guardianship. The first sign that everything had changed was the silence. Communication networks across the galaxy had been buzzing with increasingly desperate reports from the Outer Rim, transmissions cut short as worlds went dark under the Harvester fleet's advance. Then, suddenly, nothing. Fleet Commander Torres of the Dominion Navy sat in his command chair aboard the battleship Vengeance, part of the last defensive line protecting the core worlds. His orders were simple: hold position at any cost, buy time. For civilian evacuations, it was a death sentence, and everyone knew it. "Sir," reported his sensor operator, voice tight with confusion. "I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching the Harvester fleet's position. Something's happening out there." The main display activated, showing long-range scanner data from the battle zone. What they saw defied every tactical manual ever written. Ships were appearing out of nowhere, materializing from empty space like ghosts becoming solid. But these weren't the sleek vessels from the ancient legends. They were massive, utilitarian blocks of metal and energy, each one larger than a space station. "Unknown vessels, this is Fleet Command," Torres tried broadcasting. "Please identify yourselves." A calm female voice responded immediately. "This is Captain Williams of the Terran 3rd Fleet. Sorry about the dramatic entrance, but we wanted to make sure we had everyone's attention." Torres felt his heart skip. Terran. Human. The display zoomed in on the lead human vessel, a massive construct that seemed to bend light around itself. As they watched, it moved toward the closest Harvester. Formation with casual precision. The Harvester ships immediately opened fire, unleashing energy weapons that had vaporized entire fleets. The human ship didn't even slow down. Beams that could crack planets simply passed through its hull as if it wasn't there. The ship reached the first Harvester unit and extended what looked like a metallic tendril. The moment it made contact, the Harvester machine simply stopped moving, its lights flickering and dying. "Target neutralized," Williams reported in the same conversational tone she might use to order coffee. "Moving to the next formation." Across the galaxy, defense fleets and monitoring stations watched in stunned silence as the human ships moved through the Harvester fleet like predators among prey. The machines that had seemed invincible moments before were being systematically shut down, their programming overridden, their systems repurposed. "This is impossible," breathed Commander Torres. "The Harvesters adapted to every weapon we used." "Against them?" Captain Williams's voice carried a hint of amusement. "Well, they're our technology originally. We built in some administrative overrides for exactly this situation, though I have to admit the AI did get creative with the modifications over the millennia." On the observation deck of Haven Station, the Galactic Expedition members watched the battle unfold through Admiral Cross's holographic displays. The scope of what they were seeing was staggering. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, appearing and disappearing through what looked like tiers in space itself. "How many ships do you have out there?" Hayes asked, trying to count the contacts on the display. "Third Fleet has about 200 vessels," Cross replied. "Though Captain Williams is only using a dozen for this operation. She likes to keep things efficient." Ambassador Thane pointed to a group of human ships that had just appeared inside a Harvester formation, ignoring every physical law he understood. How are they doing that? Moving through solid matter, appearing from nowhere? Commander Roberts joined them at the display. "Dimensional folding, mostly. We learned how to step outside normal space-time about 3,000 years ago. Makes travel much more convenient, though it does confuse sensor systems. The battle, if it could be called that, was completely one-sided. Human ships would appear, touch a Harvester unit with what looked like casual indifference, and the ancient machine would simply shut down. Within hours, Formations that had consumed entire star systems were floating dead in space. "What happens to them now?" asked the Crystalline Collective representative. "Salvage and recycling, mostly," Williams reported, "though some of the newer units actually have some interesting improvements. We might incorporate a few of their innovations into our own systems." The casual tone was becoming familiar, but no less staggering. These humans were treating the galaxy's greatest threat like a minor inconvenience, a household chore that had been put off too long. As the last Harvester formation went silent, reports began pouring in from across the galaxy. Not just about the battle, but about other things. Defense installations that hadn't worked in centuries were suddenly online. Ancient ruins were powering up for the first time in millennia. Dangerous regions of space that had been avoided for generations were clearing, their hazards simply disappearing. "We're getting readings from the Typhon Nebula," reported a Syndicate observer. "The radiation storms that have blocked passage there for 2,000 years just stopped." Cross nodded. "Spring cleaning, you might say. We've been letting various maintenance tasks accumulate while we worked on other projects. Seemed like a good time to catch up." The scale of it was breathtaking. Across the galaxy, human systems that had been hidden or dormant for millennia were activating. Ancient guardians built into asteroids and space stations were revealing themselves, beginning repairs and improvements that had been put off for centuries. "How long have you been watching us?" Torres asked over the communication link. "Captain." Williams appeared on screen, her image showing a middle-aged woman with laugh lines around her eyes and an expression of infinite patience. "Since the beginning, really. We've seen every civilization rise, watched every species take their first steps into space. It's been quite the privilege." She gestured to something off-screen. "We have archives going back 50,000 years. Every first contact, every major breakthrough, every time a species discovered faster than light travel, we've been cheering you on from the sidelines." The implications were staggering. Every major moment in galactic history, every triumph and disaster, had been witnessed by beings who could have intervened but chose to let events unfold naturally. "The Crystalline Wars," Hayes said quietly. "The Great Plague of Rigel 7. The extinction of the Builders. You watched it all happen." Williams's expression became sad. "The hardest part of being a guardian is knowing when not to help. Direct intervention prevents growth, prevents the hard-won wisdom that comes from overcoming challenges. But we made sure the truly catastrophic events were prevented, the ones that would have ended all growth permanently." She brightened slightly. "Besides, you've all done remarkably well. The galaxy is more peaceful now than it's ever been, more cooperative, more diverse, more full of wonder and possibility. You should be proud of what you've built." As the human fleet began the work of cleaning up the Harvester debris, other ships appeared throughout the galaxy. Not warships, but vessels clearly designed for construction and repair. They began working on projects that had been abandoned for centuries, completing half-built space stations, clearing dangerous navigation hazards, and generally tidying up the galaxy. "What happens now?" Ambassador Thane asked. Admiral Cross smiled. "Now? Now you go home and tell everyone that the crisis is over. And perhaps mention that humanity is available for consultation on certain matters, should anyone be interested in more formal diplomatic relations." He paused, looking out at the impossible vista of the human star system. "We've been in hiding long enough, I think. It might be time to rejoin the galactic community, though perhaps with a slightly different role than last time." Outside, the human ships continued their work with the quiet efficiency of gardeners tending to a vast cosmic garden. The galaxy's most dangerous crisis had been resolved in less than a week, handled with the casual competence of beings who had spent millennia preparing for exactly this moment. The sleeping giants were awake, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had become something entirely different. Where once desperate representatives had gathered to face extinction, now the greatest minds of 100 worlds sat in stunned silence, trying to process what their galaxy had become overnight. General Foster of the Terran Defense Force stood at the center of the council chamber, his presence somehow filling the vast space, despite his unremarkable appearance. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations, except a small pin that seemed to shift between dimensions when viewed directly. First, let me apologize for any inconvenience caused by our delayed response to the Harvester situation, he said, his voice carrying easily to every corner of the chamber. We had hoped to resolve the issue before it became noticeable, but the AI's modifications were more extensive than anticipated. Ambassador Thane found himself laughing, a sound that bordered on hysteria. Inconvenience? General, those machines consumed 47 star systems. Foster's expression became genuinely contrite. Yes, and we take full responsibility for that. The Harvester Project was one of our early terraforming initiatives before we understood the dangers of unconstrained artificial intelligence growth. We should have implemented the shutdown protocol centuries ago. He activated a holographic display showing the aftermath of the human intervention. Where the Harvester fleet had left empty space, new worlds were already taking shape. Planets, reconstructed from the consumed matter, their surfaces prepared for eventual colonization. The good news is that we were able to recover approximately 93% of the consumed matter. We're currently rebuilding the destroyed worlds, though we've taken the liberty of making some improvements to their atmospheric compositions and geological stability. The colonists should find them much more pleasant than the originals. The casual mention of rebuilding entire star systems left the council speechless. Dr. Hayes finally found her voice. General, what exactly are humanity's capabilities? Foster considered the question carefully. That's complicated to explain. We've had several millennia to explore what you might call alternative approaches to physics. We've learned to work with dimensions beyond the standard 3, manipulate probability streams, and interface directly with quantum field structures. He smiled at their confused expressions. Think of it this way. You've been learning to use tools to shape your environment. We've learned to reshape the tools themselves, including the fundamental forces that govern reality. A representative from the hive clusters buzzed nervously. Are you saying humans have transcended physical limitations entirely? Oh, not at all, Foster replied. We're still very much physical beings. We just have a broader understanding of what physical encompasses. Though I will admit that some of our researchers have gotten quite exotic in their approaches to existence. As if summoned by his words, another figure materialized in the chamber. Not through any doorway or transport system, but simply existing where a moment before there had been empty space. The newcomer looked perfectly normal except for eyes that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. Sorry I'm late, she said cheerfully. I was exploring a pocket universe and lost track of time. How's the integration briefing going? Foster sighed. Dr. Stone, we discussed this. No teleporting during formal diplomatic sessions. It makes our guests nervous. Stone looked around the chamber, noting the wide-eyed stares and slack jaws. Oh, right. Sorry about that. I'll use the door next time. She walked to the exit, opened the door, stepped through it, and then immediately reappeared in her original spot. Better? The demonstration, clearly meant as humor, only served to emphasize the vast gulf between human capabilities and everything the galactic community thought they understood about reality. Foster cleared his throat. What Dr. Stone is trying to illustrate in her own way is that humanity has developed certain conveniences that might seem unusual from your perspective. But these are tools, not magic. Everything we do follows comprehensible principles, though some of those principles might require expanded educational frameworks. Ambassador Thane leaned forward. General, I have to ask the question everyone is thinking. If humanity has these capabilities, why allow the galaxy to struggle with wars, resource conflicts, and technological limitations? The chamber fell silent, waiting for an answer that might define the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galactic community. Foster's expression became serious. Because strength that isn't earned is weakness in disguise. Every species in this chamber has overcome challenges that forged your character, developed technologies through trial and error, learned cooperation through necessity. If we had simply given you everything, you would have learned nothing. He gestured to the assembled representatives. Look at what you've built. A galactic community where hundreds of different species work together, trade freely, resolve disputes through negotiation, rather than warfare. You've created something that didn't exist when we first encountered galactic civilization. Dr. Stone nodded enthusiastically. Though we did nudge things along occasionally. Remember the quantum wars? We may have encouraged certain key scientists to have breakthrough insights at critical moments. And that time, the Dominion and the Syndicate were about to start a full-scale war over mining rights. Those sudden discoveries of alternative resource deposits weren't entirely coincidental. Foster gave her a warning look. What Dr. Stone means is that we've provided gentle guidance when absolutely necessary. But the achievements, the growth, the wisdom your civilizations have developed, that's entirely your own accomplishment. The weight of this revelation settled over the chamber. Every major breakthrough, every crisis averted, every moment when disaster had been narrowly avoided now took on new meaning. Humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had been invisible gardeners, pruning away the worst possibilities while allowing natural growth to flourish. Commander Torres, attending via holographic link from his ship, asked the question many were thinking. What does this mean for our future? Will humanity take control of galactic affairs? Good heavens, no, Foster said, looking mildly horrified at the suggestion. We tried direct governance early in our development. It was a disaster. Bureaucracy, politics, the endless meetings. We much prefer our current arrangement. He activated another display showing the current structure of galactic civilization. You've built something remarkable here. Democratic councils, trade federations, cultural exchange programs, peaceful conflict resolution. Why would we want to interfere with that? Dr. Hayes raised her hand tentatively. But surely there are things you could teach us? Technologies, scientific principles, medical advances? Stone's eyes lit up with excitement. Oh, absolutely. We've been dying to share some of our discoveries. Did you know you can cure most diseases by convincing quantum particles to rearrange themselves? And we've figured out how to make stars burn more efficiently. Oh, and terraforming. We can turn a barren rock into a garden world in about 6 months now. Dr. Stone, Foster interrupted gently. We discussed this. Gradual integration. We don't want to overwhelm anyone. He turned back to the council. What we're proposing is a new form of partnership. Humanity will maintain our role as guardians, preventing galaxy-ending catastrophes and providing assistance in truly desperate situations. But we'd also like to establish formal diplomatic relations, perhaps share some of our less reality-bending technologies, and participate more openly in galactic society. A representative from the Nomad fleets asked, what about the ancient artifacts? The impossible structures scattered across the galaxy? Maintenance stations mostly, Foster replied. Emergency shelters, automated repair facilities, monitoring posts. We'll be happy to activate them properly now that we're no longer hiding. Should make space travel considerably safer and more convenient. As if to demonstrate, every representative's personal communication device simultaneously chimed with an incoming message. The text was simple. Galactic Navigation Network now online. Updated star charts and hazard warnings available. Safe travels. Terran Maintenance Division. The implications were staggering. In the space of minutes, navigation that had been dangerous and uncertain for millennia had become as simple as following marked highways. Ambassador Thane stood slowly. General Foster, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to express our gratitude for humanity's protection and guidance. But I have to ask, what do you want from us in return? Foster smiled, the expression warm and genuine. The same thing. we've always wanted. To watch you grow, to see what incredible things you'll accomplish, to be proud neighbors in this vast galaxy. You've already given us the greatest gift possible, proof that intelligence and compassion can flourish in countless forms. He gestured to the assembled representatives. Every species here has contributed something unique to galactic civilization. Art, music, scientific insights, philosophical perspectives, ways of understanding existence that even we hadn't considered. You've made the galaxy richer, more diverse, more full of possibilities. Dr. Stone nodded vigorously. Plus, your entertainment broadcasts are amazing. We've been following your cultural developments for centuries. The crystalline collective's harmony cycles, the nomad fleet's probability poetry, the hive clusters, collective dreamscapes. Absolutely fascinating. The revelation that humanity had been not just protecting, but also enjoying galactic culture added an oddly comforting dimension to the relationship. As the session wound down, representatives began planning for a future that suddenly seemed brighter and more secure than anyone had dared imagine. Trade agreements would need updating to account for human involvement. Scientific exchange programs would require new frameworks. Cultural diplomacy would take on entirely new meanings. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy would need to adjust to the knowledge that the legends were true. That somewhere among the stars, ancient guardians watched over the growth of younger civilizations with infinite patience and gentle humor. Fleet Commander Torres found himself thinking about all the close calls his career had witnessed. Pirates who had suddenly retreated for no apparent reason. Navigation hazards that had mysteriously cleared just before major shipping routes reached them. Equipment failures that had been repaired by unknown hands during deep space emergencies. None of it had been luck. None of it had been coincidence. As the council session ended and representatives prepared to return to their home worlds with news that would reshape galactic understanding, General Foster remained behind to answer individual questions and concerns. His patience seemed infinite, his manner consistently warm and reassuring. Outside the station's viewports, human ships continued their work throughout the galaxy. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as the patient gardeners they had always been, tending to a vast cosmic garden and watching with pride as countless civilizations bloomed under their care. The age of legends was over. The age of partnership had begun. And in the vast darkness between the stars, humanity continued their ancient vigil, no longer hidden but still dedicated to their chosen role as guardians of the light.